For me, it's simple. Peer-driven, community-supported free play. Instead of one exhausted mom trying to summon her inner clown after work, there's a group of kids out on the block. It's how children grew up for most of human history. And I know you might think, we don't have this set up at our neighborhood. It's hard to apply this way of life if you're the only one. That emotional labor that modern parenting piles onto your back, it lifts when kids are allowed to be with each other. Co-housing is a very practical way of living where families each have their own private homes, but also share common spaces and resources. It's about restoring what so many of us lost in the age of isolated single-family homes and endless car rides. The village. These communities are designed with neurodivergent inclusivity in mind, creating co-housing, one life, live it, and co-housing communities. And here's where this gets personal. I'm not just talking about co-housing as an abstract theory. I'm working to build one right here in Austin, Texas. I'm gathering people who want to step out of the isolation of modern parenting and back into the community. Hello and welcome to Ambitious Parenting. I have to be honest, this episode started with a moment of real frustration. I picked up a new book called The Way of Play, expecting it to celebrate the joy and freedom of play. I didn't even make it through the introduction. I had to stop reading because I was furious. Why? Because it took something as beautiful and natural as play and turned it into another obligation for parents, especially mothers, to perform every day. It framed playfulness not as joy, but as duty, as a measure of whether you're doing a good job parenting. The idea is that parents should constantly find playful opportunities, even in moments of conflict, like forcing a child to go to soccer practice they don't want to attend, or nudging them to finish reading when they're not interested. And I thought, wait, how is this real play? Why are we creating these conflicts in the first place? Why is the solution always for parents to do more, perform more, and carry more responsibility than ever before? In this episode, I want to push back hard on that idea. I'll share what anthropology, psychology, and my own experience tell us about what kind of play actually helps our kid and what kind actually burns parents out. And then I'm going to take you somewhere different. I want to introduce you to a solution I'm personally working on here in Austin, Texas. It's a radical, community-based approach that makes real, joyful, peer-driven play the norm again. And it takes a whole lot of pressure off parents. Let's get into it. So there I am, reading along, and the book starts laying out this picture of the ideal parent. And in this picture, your role is to play constantly, not just when it's fun, not just when you feel it, but as a daily responsibility. According to the authors, this is how you build your child's attachment, emotional stability, and social skills. And if you don't do it, well, it feels like you're failing them. Then I hit the part that really made me pause. They encourage parents to find playful opportunities in moments of conflict. So imagine your child doesn't want to go to soccer practice, or they're pushing back on finishing their reading assignment. Instead of questioning whether soccer or assigned reading is even the right choice for the child, the advice is make it playful. Turn it into a game. And I thought, wait, hold on. Why are we creating these conflicts in the first place? Why sign them up for an activity they don't want, only to sugarcoat the resistance? That's not play. That's marketing. You're rebranding something they don't want to do, so it goes down easier. But the problem is still there. The same with reading. Reading is one of the greatest joys of life, but not if it's being used as a measure of compliance. I want my child to fall in love with the stories because we are laughing together over a book, because they see me reading for pleasure, because they want to join. in, not because I've turned it into a performance with the goal of getting them to meet someone else's standard. And the more I thought about it, the more it became clear. This isn't a play. This is about control. Gentle, smiling, but control all the same. It turns play into a tool for managing behavior, for getting compliance, for achieving development checkboxes. And the cost of that is huge. It adds emotional labor to parents, layers on guilt when we inevitably fall short, because real play is voluntary, self-directed, and joyful. Once it becomes a job, whether it's ours or theirs, it stops being play. That's the moment I closed the book, because I realized this advice doesn't just miss the point, it risks taking away the very thing it claims to celebrate. After I put the book down, I kept thinking, maybe it's not me who's out of step here. Maybe it's this whole idea that parents, especially mothers, are supposed to be our kids' main playmates. That's when I thought about David Lancy. He's an anthropologist who has spent decades studying childhood in cultures all over the world. He's the author of Anthropology of Childhood. And what he's found is fascinating because it's almost the complete opposite of what modern Western parenting advice tell us. In most of the communities he has studied, there's no expectation that parents will sit down every day to play one-on-one with their kids. None. Instead, children learn by being in the flow of life. They watch adults work, cooking, farming, weaving, repairing tools, and they join in at their own level. They sweep alongside their grandmother, carry water with an older sibling, or mimic their father fixing something in the yard. This is their vision of learning through play. And when they're not doing that, they're with other kids, siblings, cousins, neighbors. They roam together, invent games, climb trees, chase animals, build forts, create rules, break them, renegotiate them, and settle disputes without an adult orchestrating fun.
Children learning their culture in the non-weird society as it's very important to distinguish between adult-initiated and child-initiated. So this to me is a very, very profound difference. In the village, it's not just that kids have a lot of freedom, but they take charge of their own education. They watch, they learn, and then they try.
Lancy has a term for the way parents in many of these cultures approach child rearing: the theory of detachment. It's the idea that a healthy parent-child relationship involves a gradual loosening of constant involvement as children grow, because the goal is independence. In this model, parents deliberately step back so children can step forward. It's not neglect in the harmful sense. It's a kind of trust, a belief that children learn best when they're allowed to try, fail, explore, and interact without adults controlling every moment.
What is anthropology, and I'm just a mouthpiece here, but what has anthropology contributed to a critique of existing child development theory? I think one of the most important ones, which I've contributed a piece to, most important ones is in effect, dismantling of attachment theory. And attachment theory is one of the most popular, well-entrenched, deeply entrenched theories in all of child psychology. And yet, there's evidence from anthropology makes the fundamentals of attachment theory almost impossible to sustain. And this starts, for example, with the fact that in most indigenous communities, you have alloparenting. It isn't just the mother with the child and toddler, with the infant, toddler, child, which is, of course, the assumption made by all the theorists of attachment theory is it's this two-person relationship, the mother and the child. So alloparenting. My own personal contribution to this, which I talk about in the book, is that when you look at cross-culturally at attitudes about attachment, maybe under a different name or just maybe that's people observing, when you look at it, it's easier to sustain a general theory of detachment. That is, there seem to be far more reasons for a mother to be somewhat detached from her infant and toddler. And I go into what is the evidence for that? And that's one.
And the result? Those kids grow up resourceful, resilient, and socially skilled. They know how to solve problems because they have been solving their own for years. They're confident in their own abilities because they've had the space to test them. When I compare that to our culture, where parents are told that they must be constant entertainers, constant play partner, I can't help but wonder if our over-involvement is actually robbing our kids of something essential. We say we want independent, resilient children, but we structure their lives in ways that keep them dependent on us for stimulation, problem solving, and even fun. Maybe, just maybe, the healthiest thing we could do is learn a little from the theory of detachment and give our kids back the gift of space.
So you look for openings, wedges. I say overall, I don't think anthropology has much chance to influence mainstream thinking about children's education and development. But there may be these where we have overwhelming evidence, like attachment theory, for example. There may be some wedge opportunities that we could take advantage of and bring about what we might think is more comfortable for both parents and children. I use the term benign neglect in addressing. I had a blog with Psychology Today some years ago. I haven't had time to deal with it, but the title of it is benign neglect. And the argument I made throughout that blog, again and again, was parents, American parents, Western parents, need to practice a little greater neglect of their children. They need to look the other way. They're just. I mean, I'm struck by the statistic that even though we have fewer children, the birth rate is plummeted, especially in, say, Italy and European countries. Birth rate is plummeted, even though we have far fewer children. Mothers, especially fathers and mothers both, actually report much higher levels of involvement in childcare. How can that be? If there are fewer children, how does it doesn't compute? The arithmetic doesn't work. Until you realize what's happening is that modern parents are taking upon themselves all these responsibilities, which are really rather unnecessary in many ways.
David Lance's research shows us that in much of the world, kids grow up without parents as their daily playmates, and they thrive. And that made me think of someone coming at this from a completely different angle, psychology. Peter Gray is an evolutionary psychologist who spends decades studying play and learning. Our culture is taking away the very thing kids need most, free, self-directed play. He talks about how over the past few decades, we have steadily replaced open, unstructured childhood with scheduled activities, lessons, and adult-run sports. We have done it with best intentions. We want them to learn, to be safe, to succeed, but in the process, we have crowded out the one ingredient kids can't do without: time and freedom to just play.
What you find, if you find kids outdoors at all, is they're wearing uniforms, they're on some kind of manicured field, they're following the directions of adult coaches while their parents are sitting on the sidelines cheering their every move.
And the cost of that? It's huge. Peter Gray links the decline of free play directly to a rise in anxiety, depression, and even suicide among children and teens. He says that when kids lose control over their own activities, they lose the practice they need to build resilience. They never get to be authors of their own stories. Everything becomes something done to them, not by them.
Decades that play has been declining. We have seen a well-documented increase in all sorts of mental disorders in childhood. The best evidence for this comes from the use of standardized clinical assessment questionnaires. Based on such assessments, 5 to 8 times as many children today suffer from major depression or from a clinically significant anxiety disorder as was true in the 1950s. And this has been a continuous, gradual, roughly linear increase over the years. Very well documented. Over this same period, we've seen among young people from age 15 to 24 a doubling of the suicide rate. We've seen among children age 15 and under a quadrupling of the suicide rate. Over this same period of time, the suicide rate for people my age has gone down considerably. We've become a worse world for children, not necessarily a worse world for adults, and maybe a better world for us older adults. We've also seen a decline in the sense that young people's sense that they have control over their own lives. There's a questionnaire called the Internal-External Locus of Control Scale. There's a version of this for children as well as for adults. It's been given since about 1960. Ever since it's been given, we've seen a decline, a continuous decline in children and young adults' sense that they have control over their own lives. They have more and more of a sense that their lives are controlled by fate, by circumstance, by other people's decisions. Now, this is significant in terms of the relationship between anxiety and depression, because one thing clinical psychologists know very well is that not having an internal sense of control sets you up for anxiety and depression. More bad news. We've also seen in fairly recent years, due to questionnaires that have been given out since about 1980, a rise in narcissism in young people, and a decline in empathy. And most recently, there's been research studies analyzing results of tests of creativity over the years, which show that there's been a gradual decline in creative thinking among children, school children of all grades, since about the mid-1980s.
And here's the thing. When I say play, I don't just mean running around outside, though that's part of it. I mean play that is truly child-led. The kind where kids invent a game, make the rules, change the rules, disagree, make up again. That's where they learn how to negotiate, how to collaborate, how to stand up for themselves, and how to compromise. No adult could design a curriculum that teaches those skills better than a game of tag that ends in an argument over who was really out. The problem with structure, adult-controlled play, is that the learning part gets handed to the adult. The adult is the referee, the coach, the rule maker. The child's role is to follow along. Sure, they might get exercise or skill practice, but they're not getting that deep social and emotional workout that comes from figuring things out themselves.
And I conducted a survey of anthropologists who had observed hunter-gatherer cultures in various isolated parts of the world. And we asked them questions about children and play and the cultures that they observed. Every single one of these 10 different anthropologists who had studied hunter-gatherer cultures on 3 different continents told us that the children in the culture that they studied, including the young teenagers, were free to play and explore on their own without adult guidance all day long, from dawn to dusk, essentially every day. The adults in these cultures, when asked, say, we have to let them play because that's how they learn the skills that they need to acquire to grow into adulthood. Some of these anthropologists told us that the children that they observed in these cultures are among the brightest, happiest, most cooperative, most well-adjusted, most resilient children that they had ever observed anywhere. So from a biological evolutionary perspective, play is nature's means of ensuring that young mammals, including young human beings, acquire the skills that they need to acquire to develop successfully into adulthood. From a religious perspective, we might say that play is God's gift that makes life on earth worthwhile.
Peter Gray's message is so simple. It's almost radical in today's parenting climate. Give kids back their time and their freedom. Trust them enough to let them own their play, because choreographing their joy for them isn't just unnecessary, it's counterproductive. And if that sounds risky, think about it. Human beings have been learning through free play for hundreds of thousands of years. Organized activities, constant adult supervision, that's the new experiment. And honestly, I don't think the results are looking good.
Some of the reasons why play has declined. One, of course, is the increased weight of school. But an even more important reason, as important as that one is, I think an even more important reason for the decline of play has been the spread outside of the school walls of what I call a schoolish view of child development. The view that children learn best everything from adults, that children's own self-directed activities with other children are wastes of time. We don't often say it that way, but that's the implicit understanding that underlies so much of our policy with regard to children.
So we have already explored how anthropology and psychology highlights the damage of overparenting, and now comes the research layer. What does science say happens when kids play freely versus when play is staged by us? Let me tell you a story. Picture a group of kids in the backyard. No coach, no timer, no lesson plan. Them making up games on the fly, negotiating rules, falling out, laughing, reconciling, all on their own. That's free play in its purest form. Now, research shows that free play is where kids build real-world skills. Executive function, like planning their next move, shifting strategies, mid-game, remembering rules. Emotional regulation, learning to cool down after a heated chase or a disagreement. Creativity, inventing a new game on the spot, figuring out how to stay friends when someone broke their imaginary kingdom. Contrast that with adult-led play, rules decided by grown-ups, coaches intervening, outcomes judged. It's organized. Sure, but here's when it gets tricky. When adults control the play, they become the problem solvers, the rule makers, the authority. Kids don't get to own the challenge or emotionally wrestle with it. What researchers call reduced autonomy starts creeping in. Children begin to feel they can't navigate social dilemmas or invent solutions on their own. And over time, this erodes their confidence and starts planting the seeds of performance anxiety, because now play feels like something you have to do right, not just enjoy. This is where Dorsa Amir enters with a powerful reminder. In her TEDx talk and her broader research, she challenges the idea that parents must constantly craft their children's experience. She points out that this pressure, always entertaining, always educating, is more harmful than helpful. In fact, active direct instruction is historically rare. Children are brilliant learners through observation, exploration, and boredom. They learn most naturally. She says for decades, we've been pulling away the training wheels to adulthood by removing unstructured and mixed age play. As she puts it, when we take away mixed age play groups, when we take away unstructured play, we are in fact taking away the training wheels to adulthood. Dorsa also emphasizes something that made me nod so hard. Kids don't have to learn the alphabet or animal noises to play. They're always learning. It's a reminder that we don't need to micromanage every moment for learning to happen. Kids are wired to learn, even and especially when we step back.
Years ago, most of our environments started to change. A lot. In fact, they changed so quickly and so drastically that many anthropologists believe we are now in a state of evolutionary mismatch. This means that the environment has changed too quickly for some of our genes to keep up. Cultural evolution is much faster than genetic evolution. And what this means is that our minds and bodies might be optimized for a world that most of us no longer live in. So what did this past environment look like? Well, it's impossible to perfectly answer this question. Bones fossilize, behavior doesn't. But we can learn a lot by looking at current day societies like the Shuar. And I want to clarify here, the Shuar are not a prehistoric people or windows into the past. They are modern people. But their way of life may give us a clue about what childhood was like in the past. And what we know from looking across a large number of these small-scale societies is that there are a lot of common patterns. For instance, in virtually all of these societies, women give natural births. Mothers breastfeed frequently and for long periods of time. Parents sleep in the same room as their kids. And children are constantly in physical contact with other people. These patterns have started to change in our Western societies. Here, C-sections are more prevalent, as is formula feeding. Kids often sleep in their own little rooms. And we don't want people in physical contact with us or our children. We value personal space. But let's go back to the idea of mismatch. The practices in yellow have marked the human experience for 99% of our time on this planet. The stuff in blue is just 1% of human history. These massive changes have happened so quickly that they may be out of whack with a world we are born expecting. And we think there are consequences for these changes, both good and bad. For instance, C-sections save lives, but they also shape the bacteria in our gut and our immune system in ways that might have negative consequences. But as an anthropologist who studies behavior, one shared feature of these societies that I want to focus on, and one that I've been able to see for myself, is this. In small-scale societies, alongside the adult community, is a complex mini-community of children, an alternate society. This child society is made up of kids of all ages and genders. It has its own unique culture and leaders. It has drama and a surprising amount of political intrigue. To understand why this child society is so important for development, it helps to keep in mind a curious fact about humans, and that is to become a successful adult in any culture, children have to learn an enormous number of complicated skills. These include both technical skills, like building a fire, and social skills, like maintaining friendships. And to perfect these skills, which take decades, children also develop foundational skills, like creativity, determination, and problem solving. Like one day, when the Shuar adults were playing a soccer game, I saw a group of kids set up their own soccer game right next to the adults. When they called me over, I got really excited because I thought they wanted me to play with them, but they were like, actually, you just keep score so all of us can play. Problem solved. Shuar kids, like kids everywhere, spend a lot of time observing adults and incorporating their behaviors into their play. In fact, this is one of the reasons that play itself has evolved as a way to practice these skills in ways that are low cost. No one has to encourage kids to do this. They do it on their own. Because through unstructured play, children learn how to become adults. Another important benefit to this mixed-age society is that kids teach to and learn from one another. Younger kids benefit by learning from older kids who are only slightly better than them. And through teaching, older kids strengthen their own skills. As you may have experienced yourself, teaching helps you learn. It's hard to find these patterns in our Western societies. Kids here spend the majority of their development in a room with other kids their own age by design. Adults are totally in charge of the content and structure of their time. They determine when kids eat, they determine when kids play, they even determine when kids can go to the bathroom.
Now, does this mean we step away entirely? Not at all. The balance researchers point is a safety presence without control. Think of a life being being a lifeguard. You're close enough to respond if something goes wrong, but you're not in the water directing every stroke or cheering every lap. That's the sweet spot. Letting kids own their play, their conflicts, their creations, with you there as support, not control. Letting go of the script doesn't abandon them, it empowers them. And that's the kind of play that shapes confident, creative, emotionally resilient humans, not staged, managed fun, but lived, messy, unscripted joy. So if the way of play is nudging us toward choreographing every laugh and every moment, what's the alternative? What's the counter argument? For me, it's simple. Peer-driven, community-supported free play. Let's imagine this together. Instead of one exhausted mom trying to summon her inner clown after work, there's a group of kids out on the block. They're making up games, trading stories, climbing, arguing, reconciling, and the parents? They're nearby. Maybe cooking dinner together, chatting, resting, even just existing as adults, not referees. This isn't just wishful thinking. It's how children grew up for most of human history. And I know you might think, we don't have this set up at our neighborhood. It's hard to apply this way of life if you're the only one. And this is the fact. If you send your kid to the street right now, most likely she will be the only kid outside. So it's not fun for her to be out there. Also not safe if she's the only one. So you need to hover there the whole time. Don't worry. I will talk about the solution and my solution later on. But let's confess. For parents, this shift is liberating. You are no longer the sole playmate, entertainer, the emotional regulator. That emotional labor that modern parenting piles onto your back, it lifts when kids are allowed to be with each other. Community-supported play doesn't just build strong kids, it heals the parents too. So instead of saying, you must play every day to prove your love, I want us to say, let's create spaces where kids can play freely with each other, with us nearby, not in control, but in community. That's not less love. That's actually more love because it's sustainable, it's joyful, and it honors the real nature of childhood. So after tearing apart this book and really after years of feeling the weight of modern parenting, I want to pivot to something hopeful because critique without a vision doesn't get us very far. Let me introduce you to an idea that once I discovered it, completely shifted how I think about raising kids today. It's called cohousing. Cohousing is a very intentional, very practical way of living where families each have their own private homes, but also share common spaces and resources. Think a cluster of homes with a shared courtyard, a common house for meals, celebrations, gardens, workshops, maybe even childcare rooms. The design itself is intentional. It nudges people toward connection. Kids spill out into a shared green space where their friends are always nearby. Parents can cook together, trade off watching kids, or just sit on the porch knowing their child is safe within a community. It's about restoring what so many of us lost in the age of isolated single-family homes and endless car rides. The village. And co-housing isn't just a nice idea. It works. There are thriving co-housing communities across the US, from Massachusetts to California, and hundreds more in Europe, especially in Denmark, where the movement began. These aren't experiments anymore. They are decades-old neighborhoods where kids have grown up with freedom and parents have felt supported instead of drained. Charles Duret is often credited, along with Catherine McCammond, bringing the concept of co-housing from Denmark to North America. He coined the term and co-authored the foundational book, Creating Co-housing, Building Sustainable Communities. Over his career, Duret has designed more than 55 co-housing communities in North America. Today, co-housing is a proven and growing reality. Across the United States, there are well over 160 established communities in at least 25 states, with another 125 plus in development. Other sources estimate up to 170 to 200 communities in various stages of completion. Beyond general community virtues, co-housing can be the ultimate solution for families with neurodivergent children. These communities are designed with neurodivergent inclusivity in mind, fostering environments where sensory needs, social rhythms, and routines can be respected, supported, and woven into daily life rather than managed in isolation. It's not just possible, it's already happening, and doing so in a way that supports rich, authentic childhood for all kids. If you are interested to know more, please make sure you read all Charles Durett's books, Creating Co-Housing, One Life, Live It, and Co-Housing Communities. Why does this matter for play? Because co-housing naturally creates the conditions for free, peer-driven play. Children don't need their parents to schedule a play date 2 weeks in advance. They just run outside and there's someone to play with. They build forts, invent games, roam in parks the way children are wired to. Parents, meanwhile, aren't the entertainers. They're part of the web of support. You don't have to do it all alone because you're literally surrounded by people who care about your kids and who also need you. And here's where this gets personal. I'm not just talking about co-housing as an abstract theory. I'm working to build one right here in Austin, Texas. I want to create a community where kids can grow up with that freedom and connection, and where parents can breathe easier knowing they don't have to carry the whole load alone. So if what I'm saying resonates with you, if you're listening and thinking, yes, that's the word I want for my kids, then I'd love to hear from you. I'm gathering people who want to be part of this vision, who want to step out of the isolation of modern parenting and back into the community. Because the alternative to guilt-driven parental clown play is not neglect, it's rebuilding the village. It's giving our kids back their freedom and giving ourselves back our sanity. And co-housing, I believe, is one of the clearest paths there. So if you're in Austin, or if you'd love to be part of building something like this, reach out to me. I'm going to leave my email. You have access to all my social media links in the description. I'm forming a core group of people who want to start a co-housing community here, a place where our kids can roam and where we as parents can feel supported instead of isolated. If that vision excites you, I want you in the conversation, because this is how change happens, not in theory, but in practice, when we start building the world we want for our kids. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Andisha Parenting. If you enjoyed it, please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and share it with someone who might benefit. And if you have a powerful story or experience that could help other parents or children, I'd love to hear from you. You can send me a message on social media or contact me through the email I share in the description. Until next time, take care of yourself and your little ones.